What's going on, guys? So I had some requests from the sim racing subreddit and then the DIY sim racing group on Facebook where I shared my triple monitor stand the other day. There was a lot of people that had questions on some of the dimensions and if I had any plans. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be kind of showing the rig off so you can see the different parts, and then I'll give verbally the dimensions of each piece when I'm going through, and then hopefully I will link a either a CAD model or something to the video that will have a drawing with the dimensions on it. I'll post the video before I get that done though, just so I can get the video out there. I don't have enough time to really do it all at one time, so I figured get this out and then I can at least have some information to give you. So the main goal with this is I wanted the rig to be as cheap as possible and have the least amount of hardware possible. I see a lot of triple monitor mounts, DIY ones, that you have to buy a lot of custom hardware to get the joints and stuff. I wanted to try and cut as much of that out because then you get into measuring pivot points and you get weak points at those joints. So I was looking to eliminate as much of that as possible. That being said, the only parts of this build that aren't just cut 2x4s and deck screws to put them together are the VESA mounts holding the monitors. So the VESA mounts are going to run you, I think, $11.99 on Amazon each, so $36 when you buy them all. And then the wood, I think you can do this build with 6 2x4s. They don't have to be good ones, so you can probably go to Lowe's and get 6 2x4s for, I don't know, $36. So I think we're at $72. And then I have a top VESA mount for the fourth. I think I bought that off Amazon for $20. So I think we're cooking around $96, $92, and then $100 for the deck screws. Now, not included in those costs are the tools you're going to need, which are going to be a drill, a saw, blade saw, tape measure, and drill bits. And you can pick these up at Lowe's pretty cheap. I ended up only needing the star bit for the deck screws that I used, and then just one of these sets as well. Had every bit I need. This actually includes, obviously, bits for pre-drilling holes for the screws, and then the size appropriate for pre-drilling for the VESA mounts. Alright, so I'm adding this in after the fact because I forgot to do it before, but these are tools that you don't necessarily need, but will make things a lot easier. So we've got one of these contractor angles. This is going to be useful for when you measure any vertical lines or corners when you're trying to attach these. Say you measure the tape from the floor and you make your nick at where you want to measure the cross beams. Then you can take this, put it on the side, and draw a nice straight line across at your nick. And then when you go to screw those cross beams on, you can line it right up with that nice straight line, and you know it's accurate because of this. The next one is a C-clamp. The C-clamp is good because if you take your time to do a 90-degree angle on these legs on the bottom, what can happen when you're drilling in is sometimes the rotation of the drill, just the nature of it, the screw, will offset your vertical just a little bit. So if you take the C-clamp, get it down there nice and tight, it's less likely to rotate once you finally measured it out. And next thing, I kind of alluded to it there, is a level. So the level is going to be good when you're doing those vertical uprights because you snack that level on, you can see if it's actually going straight up. Same thing goes for when you're doing your center monitor. You're going to want to put one on top of the center monitor and make sure that that is actually flat, because if your center monitor isn't flat and then you line up one on the right side to it, you're going to then go to the left side, and because it's going down like this, the other side is going to be way above your center monitor, and it's going to drive you nuts, because it did to me. So use this for your monitor levels, and it's helpful for the cross members that go across. You put this on, and then you know that those are going to be straight, because ultimately those cross members are what your monitors will attach to. So you want those to be flat as well. Least importantly is one of these large angles, one of these large framing squares. This is just good if you're trying to do like these legs and make a large 90. You butt this up to the 2x4 that's on the floor, and then the vertical one, if you put it there, you can see if there's, if it's going up and you start to see a gap between the edge of this, you know that it's not at a 90-degree angle, and you can adjust it. So those are the tools that you don't need, but will help you out in the long run. So if you don't have those tools, they're pretty expensive to get, and therefore it might be worth going and buying the aluminum extrusion rigs for a heftier price. But if you can borrow these from someone, I'm sure if someone asked me, I'd let them borrow them for a day, or I'd go help them out. It'll save you a ton of money. All right, on that note, I'm going to stop talking, and I am going to show the rig off. I'm probably just going to point to different parts of the rig and just say how long each section is and where in the build you should be putting that piece together. Okay, so I've removed the monitors, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through each piece and give you the length and kind of the order in which it should be built or placed. And just as a little side note, when I'm going through this, I'll try my best to point out spots where you might be able to optimize your wood cutting to try and save as many pieces as possible. I believe this whole thing can be done with 6 pieces. I bought 8 just in case, and 6 ended up being enough. All right, so first off, what we're going to talk about are the legs. Now, each one of these is 48 inches, so 4 feet long. So if you get one board, you can just cut it in half and you'll have both of those leg bases. The next piece are these 5-foot uprights that I did. So 5 feet being 60 inches. So you're going to want to cut those next. And what I did is I used a C-clamp to pin these ends together, and then I stood it up and used a level on the vertical piece in order to get it right. And then what I did is I just did 4 screws to the side there with the C-clamp on, and then it was nice and at a nice 90-degree angle going up, and they were pretty solid. So you're just going to do that on each side. These angled pieces are measured at 24 inches on the long side on the top, and then I cut them at 45-degree angles. So that way it would sit nice and flat on here, and then also sit flush with the edge over here. And that's just to counteract some of the tipping moment that you'll get from having these monitors up top. So if you cut those vertical posts to 5 feet, you're going to be left with 3-foot sections on the end of each. And that's what you're going to make your first monitor arm off of, because I did this one at 36 inches. And I think that's an appropriate length. So you're going to cut those to 36 inches and screw them together. I think I have some video of me doing that. I'll put it in real quick. So I've got my 2 pieces of 36 here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to screw in 2 on each end, maybe 1 in the middle. So we've got our 2 arms now. This one's actually a little shorter than that one because I had some 32-inch pieces of wood from one of the cuts earlier left over, and I really don't think I'm going to need the full 36 inches, so I just decided to try out one with 32. But yeah, so what I did is I just screwed through 2 on each end. Actually, I forgot one there. And then 1 in the middle. So I got these solid arms that probably will not warp. Now, the next part you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut these pieces going across here. These are 40 inches. So you're going to want 4 40-inch pieces. So the next step is going to vary depending on how high you're going to need your monitors to be. So I calculated my monitor height, and I came, and then you do some subtraction for the width of these 2x4s and also the height of the VESA mount. And I got that this piece of wood here, the bottom of it needed to be 37 inches from the floor. So where I have mine now, it is 37 inches from the floor. I marked the line and installed the first piece of wood. Now, to help yourself with this process, I recommend installing this front piece and then this back piece, and then getting if you have any scrap laying around, getting a small piece of 2x4 and putting it on top of these, and then coming and doing it on each side, and then installing these top two, so that way you know you have enough room for a 2x4 to slide, because these are going to need to be able to move between when you're adjusting your monitors. So put a piece of 2x4 in on each side and then install the top two. So now the next step is, you're not going to want to do the monitor arms yet. You're going to want to do this center piece here. And so you're going to want to measure out direct center from side to side. And then you're going to want to put this piece of little 2x4 here. Just measure your top to bottom. So 3.5 space, 3.5, what's that, 10.5 inches. So it's got to be that long. You don't need this extra lip. I just had that in there because I had this piece of wood and didn't want to cut it. So once that's centered, you're going to want to get your VESA mount and go ahead and install it on that piece of wood in the gap. Now, this part is probably the most important part of the entire thing, because the main goal of this is you want a sturdy rig that's going to keep your monitors aligned. So when you're measuring this VESA mount, you really want to make sure you're going off of a common value or a common point for each one. So if you see here, this arm are behind me, and then you can kind of trace here, and then I've got this pen line here that is the mark of the bottom of this 2x4. So you're going to want to measure off the center of this line, and then you're going to want to measure down the same distance on every VESA mount you install. Otherwise, you're going to have those little itty bitty changes in the heights of your monitors, and it's going to drive you insane, and it's going to kind of ruin the whole point of doing a solid triple mount. Now, just as a little side note, you don't have to put the fourth monitor mount in, but all it is a piece of wood that goes across here. And then I put this single arm VESA mount monitor, whatever they're called, and this is just how I have it attached. So give yourself 2 screws here, 2 screws here, and then just put it, you'll have enough space here in the middle, and then that'll give it enough overhang to be over your rig. Alright, so for this part, you're pretending we don't have the monitor arms installed yet. So we've got our VESA mount for the center one installed, and what we're going to do is we're going to put our center monitor on, and then that'll give us something to gauge off of for putting the side arms on. Alright, so now I've got my center monitor on. It's installed, it's good to go. What we're going to do is now we are going to say these VESA mounts aren't installed yet on this arm. What we're going to do is we're going to slide the 2 pieces of wood in place, and then we're just going to grab one of our second monitors and kind of line it up with the existing center monitor, and that'll give us a general range of where we can then take a pen and kind of mark on the 2x4 where we're going to want that VESA mount. And then the good part about this rig is that it's adjustable enough that if it's not perfect, you can kind of shimmy the wood around and still get your angle and still have the monitor fit. So get that mark and then go back and drill and attach this VESA mount to the piece of wood. And when you're doing this, one thing you're going to want to make sure is that there's enough overhang where that piece of wood is going through the second side, is going through both of these sides. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of that counteracting of the monitor's weight going down on the moment of the 2x4s. So make sure you have enough length that it's going through. I'm not going to do the final adjusting on here because I think you all know, if you've tried this before, you could spend an hour on it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same thing on this side. You're going to put your piece of wood in. You're going to hold your monitor up. You're going to get a general idea of where it's going to sit along this wood. You'll mark it with a piece of, you mark it with pen or pencil. And then, Like I said before, you want to make sure you're consistent in how far down you're putting these Visa mounts, because otherwise you're going to have those like 1 centimeter mishaps at your bezels and it's going to drive you insane. So make sure you're measuring from the same spot and using the same, like if you're like, oh, I'll round up this time, make sure you're using the same thing throughout each measurement. Because even if you're kind of rounding off, as long as you're rounding off for each one, you're going to have it the same spot. But if, you know, one time you're like, oh, I'll call it this, you know, 1.5 centimeters, and then if the next time you're going to call it, you know, 1 1/6 centimeters, then you're going to start getting those differences, and that, you don't want that. So, Nick, measure, Visa mount, slider in place, and then we're going to grab our next monitor and put it on. Now, one tool that's really good to have when you do this is a level, because a lot of times the center monitor, you'll think it's flat, so you'll measure up this side, and then when you go to the other side, it'll be almost 1 centimeter off, because in reality, the middle monitor was like this. So slap a level on top, and make sure that that middle monitor is level when you're adjusting those sides. So once you get your 3 monitors in place and get the bezels figured out, putting the 4th monitor on, you just put that Visa mount on and then you slide it in. That's pretty simple. There's no real fine adjustment. You just got to work around with the arm and the height to get it to line up. I don't have a matching monitor for the top, so it's not going to sit evenly, so I didn't really spend much time on it. I don't think I need to show that because it's really not part of the build. So anyways, I hope that this kind of explains how I built this, and I included the links of everything in here. So that should keep any confusion down, and I will work on getting some plans, and I'll either link them in the description or just as a comment down below in the comment section for the lengths of each member, the tools that I used, and I guess it's important that these are 27-inch monitors. I should have mentioned that in the beginning of the video.